On SmackDown Friday night, we got an important announcement from Michael Cole, who alerted us about a trade window. Now, this is the first time we heard anything about this. We heard nothing about this on Monday, only on Friday. But from what it sounds like, we are in the midst of basically an open period where we may be seeing brand trades in the coming weeks, leading into the new year. The first SmackDown of the new year on January 3rd, and the first Netflix Raw on January 6th. This transfer window has been opened up between all three brands, so NXT is included. And all three general managers are going to be discussing, they're in the process of discussing potential moves ahead of those first shows of 2025. This is basically a way for them to shake up the rosters without an actual draft, is what it sounds like. Now, Mike Johnson on PW Insider had a note the other day saying that rumblings among talents for about a month now was that there could be a draft sometime in early 2025, but we have not heard that it is 100% the direction they will go as a way to move talents. So that's what he's been hearing, and that's what talents have been talking about apparently behind the scenes. But from what we heard and saw on Friday night, it sounds like maybe there won't be a draft. Although, again, they haven't confirmed that. Here's the reality on the WWE Draft, okay? The draft sucks. If you're being honest with yourself, the draft sucks, okay? The draft shows that they suck. Case in point, look at this year's draft. I said it back in April. Triple H needs to seriously reevaluate doing these drafts at all in the future. Once they appointed Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis as the general managers, they should have just had the two of them negotiate a series of trades, because doing a draft where 75% of the rosters stay exactly the same, so you come and you say, okay, the first pick in the first round and the third pick of the second, and 75% of the people end up staying exactly where they are, it's completely pointless. And what it does is it makes for 2 nights of very boring television. If both shows are going to be 3 hours come January, which is the plan, they're definitely going to need new talent from NXT. So including NXT talent in this makes total sense. And we should see a handful of NXT call-ups. Okay, deadline last night. Julia won the Iron Survivor Challenge. She is now the #1 contender for the NXT Women's Championship. She's going to be wrestling Roxanne Perez on their New Year's Evil show on January 7th. And to me, that has to be where Julia wins the NXT Women's Championship. And at that point, Roxanne could be called up to Raw. She could be called up to SmackDown. She could have been called up a year ago. So it's not like she isn't ready for that. So that's how I see that working out. And you're going to see other moves like that as well. But if you have the GMs doing trades, those trades, and you couple that with some NXT call-ups, that would accomplish the exact same thing without all of the draft nonsense. I know they like the idea of doing a draft. All the big sports do one, so we have to do one, and maybe we'll pop a rating out of it. But again, if they do it the same way they did it this year, and this was like the first real, true, full-blown Triple H draft. I don't even remember what if anything, they did last year. But I kind of look at this year, because they were talking about maybe new ideas, and I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. Let's see what they have in store. And it actually dragged down the shows. It bogged the shows down. So if that's what they're going to do, I don't want to see it. This is much better. I mean, frankly, the idea of even having a draft is nonsensical because people just move back and forth anyway. So what the fuck is the difference? What does it even matter? It's not like they're true to any type of rules they set up for this. So it's nonsensical to begin with. But the idea that you just leave it open. So if you have a need on one show, let's say somebody gets hurt, somebody leave, well, whatever the case may be, and you need a woman in the women's division on SmackDown, you need an extra body there, you need some new tag teams, right? So let's call up this person from NXT and we have a need on Raw. Great, we'll fill that need. As needs arise during the year, you can shuffle talent around, or if one program ends, like CM Punk and Drew McIntyre after their Hell in a Cell match, that would have been the perfect time to move Drew over to SmackDown, and then he ends up back on Raw the other night. So much for that. Although I guess it's still possible he can move. Yeah, just because he came back on Raw doesn't mean that he may not end up on SmackDown. And I would think that probably is the best move for him, but we'll see how all the other moves shake out. But honestly, this is the way to go. If you're going to do something like this, I'd much rather they do something like this. Just have this open period, and you could do it even twice a year. You could have an open period at the very end of the year. You could have an open period in the middle of the year, and then have like a trade deadline. To me, that just works a lot better. You saw Gunther, by the way, in the back meeting with Nick Aldis on SmackDown Friday night about what we don't know, but you're led to believe that they were discussing the possibility of Gunther coming to SmackDown. So might we see champions swapping brands? I'm going to say probably not, because they went through the trouble of changing all the belts for brand consistency. So to me, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're going to move all the champions, but I don't think they're going to do that. So I don't think that's very likely. I do think that it's very likely we will see a big name like Roman Reigns being shifted over to Raw. I don't even know what his status is these days, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he is listed on the SmackDown roster on WWE.com, but I view Roman kind of like a Brock Lesnar. Even though they may not consider him a free agent, that's basically what he is. And they're going to want him on that first Netflix Raw. He's definitely going to be there. And there's been chatter that he may be on Raw more often, at least in the first, few months of the new year, because they really are going with the all hands on deck approach with this Netflix move. They want as many big names as possible, especially on that first show. So I think you're going to see Cody, you're going to see Roman, you're going to see John Cena, who I think has already been announced. The Rock, for all we know, The Rock may show up as a surprise. Becky Lynch may come back on that show. You're going to have a lot of star power on January 6th. And I do think we'll see Roman Reigns, I don't want to say more on Raw than SmackDown, but more often on Raw. And whether that's a permanent move or that's only in the beginning of the year just to get things going on Netflix, I don't know. But we should see some big names shifting around. I could see Roman to Raw, maybe Rollins and Punk end up moving to SmackDown, right? You got to keep them on the same brand, for them to have their match at WrestleMania. So it's going to be very interesting to see who moves where. But if this is what they're planning in lieu of a draft, I'm all for it. If they're still planning on doing a draft, honestly, I just don't think that's the way to go. I think that's a mistake.